Welcome to the Left of Str8 Show, where we talk entertainment, music, books, foodies, and more each week with special guest interviews of interest to the LGBTQ community and our straight allies. Direct from the entertainment capital of Northeast Ohio. Your host, Scott Fullerton, chats with some of your favorite entertainers, celebrities, newsmakers, and behind-the-scenes people across the country and around the world who make it all happen. So sit back, grab your favorite beverage, and let's start talking.
Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Left of Str8 Show, where we interview celebrities and personalities from the worlds of entertainment, foodies, books, music, and advocacy. I'm your host, as always, Scott Fullerton, and today I have a special treat for y'all. I'm sitting down with two social media superstars who are lending their voices and sharing their journey to bring light to the experiences of our LGBTQ plus couples navigating their path to parenthood. From their well-loved YouTube and Instagram content to TikTok and their brand new podcast, Michael and Matthew have been sharing their journeys as a couple, traveling the world, and they're now offering an insightful look into the challenges and triumphs of starting a family through unconventional paths such as surrogacy, IFV, IUI, private adoption, and even foster care. They're providing resources and sharing personal stories with the awesome goal to support and inspire other LGBTQ plus couples who are embarking on similar journeys. So please welcome to Left of Str8 Show for the very first time, Michael Lindsay and Matthew Schuler, the host of the enlightening and heartwarming podcast, Who's Your Daddy? Welcome, guys. How are we doing today?
Yeah,
doing great.
doing
Thank you.
Good. Wow, what an intro. Oh my God.
You guys have had quite a journey. As I told you off air, I've been following you for a long time now. You guys are no stranger to this whole YouTube and being on air, but this podcast journey, wow, you've been on it for a month now, but I didn't realize you guys have been working on surrogacy for a year and a half. So congratulations. Yeah. That's a long journey.
Yeah, it has been a whirlwind.
Thank you.
And like I've mentioned before, I feel like we've already had our baby, but instead of a baby, it's a podcast, and it's taking a lot of energy, a lot of time, many sleepless nights.
Oh God,
but fun. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but it's fun. You know it. You've done the podcast thing. You understand. It can be a lot.
It's a different animal. I mean, you guys have been doing the YouTube video for quite a while now, but podcasting for some reason, especially you're doing guests as well, and that's a whole. When it's just yourselves, right? You have a little bit of an idea what you're doing, but then when you bring other people into it, it's like, okay, it's a lot more work than I thought, right?
Yeah, I realize we're scheduling a lot of people, doing all, the whole calendar of events, all of it.
Well, we're going to talk about all that because I want to share that it's been an amazing journey. But let's start from the beginning. I mean, if you haven't been living under a rock, I'm sure they do know you, but I always like to start off with a couple questions in the beginning. Let's start by telling just a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what kind of kids were you growing up. Michael?
Yeah, I'm from South Dakota originally. I am from a family of 8 kids, so I'm the 7th of 8. Everybody asks if I'm Mormon or Catholic, and I am Catholic, so that is the large family connection there. All my siblings have kids, so I'm like the last one. I think I always knew I wanted them. Didn't really know how that was going to happen after I came out, but I always knew that it was going to happen eventually. And then Matthew and I met in 2014, and fast forward 9 years later, and here we are.
Yeah.
There you go.
Grew up.
Matthew, talk about yourself. Where did you grow up, and what kind of a kid were you?
My name is Matt, and I grew up in Oregon, about an hour and a half south of Portland, in a small town. I come from a much smaller family. I have one full brother. And then I have several half siblings, but I never really grew up with those siblings. It was like separate families outside, whole long family history. And I was a pretty, I would say, spunky kid growing up.
I've heard dramatic.
Yes, very dramatic, but nothing's changed. I'm still dramatic. But my favorite thing to do would be to like run around outside barefoot because I never wore shoes as a kid. And so now I just like am like my
He's like a little hobbit.
feet are basically my shoes. And I would like sit in the back of my dad's pickup truck for hours and hours and hours and bake in the hot sun and just play Pokemon on my Game Boy. So that was kind of like my childhood for any Pokemon out there. That was my life for like years. So
and then I always like to ask too, I mean, you guys are a fantastic couple, but when did you first come out to yourself? Who was the first person you told? And when do you think you might have started finding your tribe?
oof.
Wow, yeah. Let's see. I was 24. So that's I think when I was like dating a woman at the beginning of the year, I think, and then it like fizzled out. And I think I had told myself like if this doesn't work, like I don't know like what else to do. Like I'm trying to see if it's like, oh, if there's like a physical attraction that's supposed to be there, or like, oh, we're supposed to just be really good friends and like it's supposed to work, and it was just not working. And so I kind of told myself at the end of that year, which was what, 2013, that I was like, all right, this is not working, and I think, you know, I just need to accept kind of what I've always known. I think if I'm remembering right, the first person I told was like my best friend at the time, who were still really good friends. But I remember, yeah, we were just sitting in a car and I was like, I have something to tell you. And that was like October probably of 2013, like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
yeah. I had a little bit of a different kind of growing up, coming out to myself kind of thing from Michael's experience. I was in a pretty conservative environment. I was like kind of hyper religious in evangelical Christianity, and I knew that I was different in like fourth or fifth grade. I started noticing that I was different from the other boys in my class and that I wasn't interested in the same things, and just kind of had this awareness that was shocking and off-putting to me. It was kind of scary, anxiety provoking as a kid, being like, oh, I feel different. This is weird. And then in sixth grade, I think is when I really like came out to myself, but I quickly like shoved all feelings down into the closet as far down deep as they could go, and lived as a closeted, you know, kid growing up through middle school and high school. And then the first person I told was my best friend. I think it was in ninth or 10th grade that I had come out to her. But I came out in like a more of a confessional type of way, like
I'm having these feelings.
I'm having these feelings and I'm sinning, blah, 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 blah. And so it was more of a conversation of how can I repress these feelings even more than like oh, I'm happy you confided in me. It was more of a, uh-oh, how do we get rid of those problematic feelings? And so I just kind of like didn't tell anyone else for the rest of high school until college. And then I started coming out to other people in towards the end of my sophomore year. I started having like more conversations around the topic, and it wasn't until my junior year of college that I started actually coming out to friends. I spent the summer in Europe in 2012 between my sophomore and junior year of college, and there was quite a few people that I met on that trip that I was learning that were like openly gay, having a lot of fun in London, Belgium, other places, and I really like admired them for the way that they're able to like live their life so openly and how it wasn't a problem. And so that was very different from where I was coming from. So I kind of brought that back with me to college, and that kind of was like the instigator for me opening up more to the people in my community. And a lot of them left, and a lot of them stuck around, and I found new people, and most of the people most of the guys at my private Christian university that I was friends with were actually also gay. And so it was great because it was kind of like we're all coming out at the same time.
It's weird how you find each other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and we talk about you guys are early adopters of YouTube back in the day, and your YouTube coming out videos are actually kind of how you guys met. I saw if people have not seen the podcast yet, I think it's your second episode where you talk about the entire trials and tribulations from a stolen car to going through the college experience, and pretty exciting and wild times. YouTube brought you together, and you're doing it this many years later. How wild is that?
It's absolute insanity.
Not anything I would have expected.
I would say trauma bonding in a way, right?
I'm sure
we go into it in that episode of our podcast, but yes, there was like a lot of crazy events that occur all in the first few weeks of us meeting and starting to date. So, and that all came to be because of our coming out videos on YouTube. Yeah.
A trial by fire. I mean, it works. I mean, you guys were through thick and thin right then and there. Did you ever, you ended up moving over while Matthew was going to school, or excuse me, while Michael was going to school. Matt, you moved back east with him.
Yes.
And you were still doing YouTube at the time. Did you guys ever you started your channel together in 2007, over 14.5 million views or something crazy like that. Did you ever think about doing it separate? Was there ever talk about, do we want to do this together, or how did that come about to kind of commingle yourselves?
Yeah, so I started in 2007. That's when I started my YouTube channel. It was Bushu37 back in the old days of YouTube. Prehistoric times of YouTube. It was great. And Michael, you started yours in
2014, like February 2014. Like a couple months before we met.
So he was quite a newbie on YouTube, but he had you had like gathered a following up at that point.
Small following.
You started and you're like, okay, now I got a following. He was pretty lucky. And then or skilled.
Thank you.
Yes. And so it was his coming out video that he sent to me, and that's how we initially started talking. And when he came out and visited, we were just like so into the YouTube video blogging thing that, or at least I was, that it was kind of like my thing that I was going to record experiences. So when you came out during the summer and we went to like Blogger Fair and we were driving out to Nebraska, I wanted to video blog the whole thing. We were kind of like doing the boyfriend tag and these cutesy trends that were happening on YouTube at the time. And so it was kind of like, I don't know, just natural because we had met through YouTube to be like, oh, let's make videos together. That'll be fun. And so we just started doing it as a way to document kind of like our fun experience dating each other in the beginning days. And then it just continued because it was like such an integral part of our relationship from the beginning. And we had developed this community online of people who were invested and interested in what was going on with our relationship and to see if we would actually make it. So I'm like, okay, we'll keep sharing this. Yeah. And that just like
we got invested. That's for sure.
I mean, we were posting separately, and then we were just sort of like, why? I mean, we're in each other's videos all the time. It's not like we're doing solo stuff. We weren't doing a lot of like just me talking on my channel or just him talking on his channel. It was like just videos that were always involving the both of us. So I think we just renamed his channel like Michael and Matt, or back in the day, or we just combined it and it was just under your name or whatever. We just uploaded, instead of uploading them separate channels and figuring out which one to do, we just decided, let's just put everything on one.
Well, it's interesting because we had a manager who told me at the time, it was like 2015, and my manager had said, don't combine your channels. He was like, absolutely not. Do not combine your channels. That's not going to be a good thing. Like, you see these couples come online and they have a channel and then they break up and then their brand is gone, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, fair enough. And I kind of disagreed with them a lot at the beginning because I was like, no, I want a couples channel. But I didn't want to like jinx our relationship somehow by having a couples channel. So I held out from doing that. And my channel was just Matthew Schuler from like 2014 to 2019. And we didn't change it to Michael and Matt and officially combine our channels until a year after we were married. Because, you first
I never remember that timeline, but
start dating, share a home, share a marriage, share bank accounts, and eventually share a YouTube channel. So it has to go in progression.
I love that. I love it. And where did the love of travel come in? I mean, obviously, you talk about, Matt, you traveled in Europe. Michael, you always kind of a traveling kind of guy, or what brought the traveling about? You guys been some amazing places.
Yeah. I mean, my dad grew up out on the West Coast. He grew up in like Vancouver, Washington area, and we lived in South Dakota, and we had a bunch of kids. So the only way for me to see like my dad's side of the family was to like put everybody in a motorhome and then just like drive. So we would do that like every summer, every other summer, and it was just always like my favorite part of the year. We're just like driving through all this like beautiful scenery, and we're just like playing games on the road, and then we come out here and everything's so different. So I always loved doing that. In high school, I got to go to like Costa Rica on a trip with my Spanish class, and my dad came along, and that was amazing. And I got to go to like Europe for the first time when I was in high school still. And I was like, this is really cool. Like I wasn't that attuned to, or I hadn't flown that much. And I was just like fascinated by the whole thing, just like ending up in Europe in like 9 hours. So I think it was something that we had done as a family. And then when it sort of expanded into like the whole like flight realm of things, you can just go all across the world. I was just like, this is so cool.
Nice.
Yeah, we could not have more like opposite experiences growing up and with
as far as traveling.
Because I grew up, I never had left the country ever up until after I graduated high school. And for the vast majority of my family vacations, we only went to the Oregon coast, which was about an hour away from where I grew up. So I didn't even go to downtown Portland. I never saw downtown Portland, which is an hour and a half away from my hometown. And I never went to downtown Portland until I think my junior year of high school.
Wow.
So like skyscrapers amazed me. Just like looking at a skyscraper was the most fascinating thing to me, because I couldn't imagine like a building that was over 5 stories tall. So like, and that was because my dad, he served in Vietnam in the 70s, and he developed PTSD from his experience there. And that turned into agoraphobia. And I didn't realize, I didn't know this until after college even. And so growing up, like our experiences as a family were very much centered around our home. And we never really went to other towns or cities traveling much. Like the coast was kind of like the farthest we would go. So, I never went camping growing up. We would set up a tent in our backyard for our like weekend fun trip. But like the tent in the backyard was actually like part of my dad's therapy to help with his agoraphobia, because it was like a thing like his therapist was prescribing to be like, hey, go and set up a tent in the backyard with your kids and try to like sleep out there, to see how that kind of, and I didn't know this growing up, but it totally makes sense. We never went to Disneyland, Disney World, or any of that. So I grew up kind of like in envy and just very frustrated at all these experiences that my friends and others would have on spring break and going to all these different places. And so I had this notion of, when I finish high school, I'm going to go all over the world. I'm going to see everything, this kind of like took it as a challenge. Like, okay, well, we'll see what I can do. So yeah, I got a job at an ice cream shop, raised money my senior year, and then I took a trip to Sweden at the end of it. Blew all my money on that plane ticket, but it was great.
That's amazing. Well, talk about you've been to, like I said, such great places. What is maybe the one place you went to that you weren't expecting to be as great as it was, and what was one maybe you were really excited to go to that was, it's all right.
What's one of the best that you weren't expecting?
I wasn't expecting to love Portugal as much as I did. We had been to Spain, and I had a very high bar set for Portugal being so close. Matthew, I think one of his favorite countries is Spain. We went there with some friends. We did like a 10-day trip. It was amazing. So I was like, man, I wonder how this is going to compare. And then I think both of us were just like, this is so, for such a small country, like, it was so fun. It was so multicultural. There was so much to do. There's so much good food. People were great. It was like very affordable, gay friendly. Like, I don't know. It just checked so many boxes that I just was not really expecting for, I don't know, a country that I didn't know many people had on their list. I've heard of it a lot more recently, but I never really heard much about it like growing up. That was the one I didn't expect. I'll think about the one. What about you?
I remember visiting Slovenia and how I didn't know much about it at all going into it, and it was just a part of this kind of Europe itinerary. And so I didn't really have anything to look forward to there. And I was like, this is just another stop on the trip, whatever. Okay, we'll go for a few days. And when I got there, I was just amazed by how beautiful it was. If you've ever heard about, experienced anything around Lake Bled, Slovenia, it's just absolutely gorgeous. It's a huge lake with a like beautiful medieval church on an island in the middle of the lake. And then there's cliff sides on one side of the lake with a medieval castle overlooking. So it's like a picture from a fairy tale book, and it's beautiful. And they have a lot of different outdoor activities around there to do. We did this, I think it was called the Emerald River Tour, and it was like a full day of going through the Alps and seeing so much beauty, going on hikes, seeing waterfalls, seeing these enormous canyons with just this bright turquoise water rushing through it. We went whitewater rafting down the river. Like, it was an incredible experience, and it was so surprising. I had no idea that I had anything like that there. So that was my favorite place that we visited on that trip.
I think one of them that I was expecting, I had very, very high expectations for. And granted, I was only there 24 hours. And so I could be completely wrong. But I didn't enjoy Paris as much as I thought I maybe would. It was like a quick day. Again, it was like a quick day trip. Like, stayed the night, got up, did some more stuff, and then left. Versailles was incredible. Like, that was wild. But like the city of Paris, I don't know. I got to the top of the Eiffel Tower, like the viewing deck, and I just looked out and I was like, it's just all very, like, all these like white buildings, this like white concrete. And it's just like this, like, just giant landscape of like the same height of building. I don't know. I think
I've heard a lot about that in Paris. Like, people have really high expectations, and then
I think have it bars set unrealistically high just through media.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I had a difficult experience, I think, in Lima, Peru. That was hard, but
you love
Lima now. When I first visited there, I hated it. It was awful. But like, again, my expectations were so high, and thinking Lima, Peru, South America, I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna fly into the Amazon. It's gonna be beautiful and jungly and gorgeous and so much fun. And you fly in, and of course it's the desert, but it's also kind of like a mud desert in a way. There's just just hill upon hill upon hill of just mud and dirt surrounding the city. So it doesn't look like a pretty desert that you're flying into. It looks like a cloud-covered mud pit. In a way, in some parts of the year. Because I also flew in. I flew in during the cold season.
Yeah.
So it was September, and in the Pacific Northwest and in Nebraska, it's beautiful in September. Weather is perfect. It's wonderful. And in Peru, the weather is not great. Well, in Lima, the weather is not great in September. It's cloud covered. I didn't see the sun for 3 weeks when I first flew in to Lima. That was not my expectation of South America. I was like, this is awful. But then I got to know the city and it felt a lot better.
That was my experience. I told you guys off air. I moved to Portland, lived there for 4 years, right?
Mhm.
And I moved up there because my best friend went to chiropractic school there, right off the highway, Western States. So when I moved up there, we moved up in September, October, whenever school started, his semester started. And Portland itself, very overcast, very rainy, right? So
Yep.
my friends are telling me, Mount Hood, we're going to go hiking, we're going to do this. Mount Hood did not show itself for the entire first month I lived in Portland. And I thought, it's not there. I don't believe it. And then all of a sudden, like the 32nd day, it's like, oh, and it's like right in your backyard, right? You can walk to it, it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. Very funny. Um, let's talk about for 2 seconds. I mean, you talked about earlier when we were talking about YouTube that your manager said, don't do it together, you might break up. We just had kind of recently that Nikki and Pierre guy break up. What do you guys do to keep yourself kind of separate from making it a job and work? How do you guys kind of find that balance in work life and doing these kind of social media things?
Well, it is a
Man.
job and work. So it is hard to, I mean, like, yeah, we do look at it as work now.
We've seen a number, I think, though, of people who are pretty public online, and then it ended up not working out. Which, I mean, I mean, people don't work out all the time,
Right.
It's just that they were somewhat of a public face. I think it's hard. I think it's hard, maybe just because they were so big, that to keep that momentum going. It's sort of like I would maybe relate it to like being an actor, right? Like a pretty like big actor. It's like there's so much expected of you to stay relevant, to stay current. People want to see new stuff, different stuff, and that can just I think that can just come with a lot of pressure.
Definitely.
And they're far larger than we are, and probably garner that much more attention just in general. And I'm sure they have way more people in their ear, saying try this, do that. I think maybe we're just at like at least a comfortable level, where it's not like, I don't know, millions and millions and millions and millions. I also think we sort of just I think we prioritize our relationship more than that. So I think I've vocalized this a lot. I was like, if this is what's gonna like break us up, then I'll just delete it. Like, I went to school. I was not like trying to do this necessarily. It wasn't like I wasn't in high school like, I want to be on YouTube, I want to be on Instagram. Like, that was never in my brain. Like, I had this whole other plan for my life, and then this just has been a nice addition, and opened up a lot of opportunities. But like, it's not something that I need to like be fulfilled. I don't think. I think there's a lot of good that's come out of it, like I said. But if it was going to be a detractor for us, then I've said that many times. I'm like, I don't need it. I can delete it if it's going to be negatively impactful on my life. Then I'll just say goodbye.
And I think that's like the same kind of sentiment that we would hold towards any career. If it's detracting from our relationship and having a super negative impact, then we would need to look at what we can do to change that, or what we need to change about ourselves in order to make it work. So, yeah, it's a hard thing when careers and jobs can get in the way of relationship stuff, and you involve finances, and then this public eye and kind of like expectations layered on top of that. So there's a lot of it can get complicated. But no, I am really thankful that Michael does have his dental career, because it helps to maybe buffer a little bit of the intensity. of how social media can feel crushing and pressure in the sense of if it is tied to 100% of your income, that can be a lot. So, and I've had other jobs in the past. I mean, I did nursing school through the pandemic and was working as a nurse. I'm no longer practicing, but I still have my license. I can still go back to nursing. But yeah, we've had to make several decisions over the years of like, okay, well, let's take a step back. Let's do this a little bit. Let's do that a little bit. So yeah, I feel like I've moved around a lot in careers in the job space, trying to figure out like what works best in our situation and where we're at in life. And right now, like, yeah, social media is great for the most part. It's just another
Yeah,
job.
that's why I was asking, because I think they said that they become more about the brand than them. That's why I said, because even this podcast, it shows you guys are talking about your journey, but it's very much sharing the experience. I think you guys have always, in the 6 or 7 years that I've been following you, that it's been very much sharing journey with others and not all about you. And that's what I kind of meant by separating the brand from your relationship. Like I
Right.
said, everyone's going to have relationship problems here or there, but it's when you make a brand decision as opposed to relationship decision. That's what you guys seem to excel at. So good on you for that.
We
Yeah, and
try. I
I
don't
know they
know.
were both actors as well, right? And if you're an actor, you have to have a very strong independent brand, I think, right, to be booked. And then I don't know what their acting side of things, looked like,
Acting, modeling,
but
etc.
maybe then it was like, oh well, this is doing well for us now, and so I don't know. That's the thing too. It's like it's not 100% of our persona is just, it's like my personality is not linked to all of my income and all of my self-worth, I guess, in an industry, I suppose. So I think having a backup plan, or like, something else in your life that you can have outside of just content creation is grounding potentially.
Yeah, I would say it's more concrete and like attributed to my personality and life in that sense because I am like full time in it right now. So it is a bit heavier on my end with like the pressure, yeah, of all that. But it again, it's helpful for him to have that balance and be able to have something else. So he's not 100% in it like me, because I think that would feel even more crushing.
Well, it's a good transition. I want to get into the podcast. Let's take a quick break because I want this is airing, I think, probably a couple weeks after your 7th episode, where you really kind of broke everything down, right? You talked a little bit about what the journey's been like, what you didn't expect, what you saw. So let's play just a little snippet of that for my listeners. We'll talk about it on the other side, okay?
Okay.
Hi, guys. We're talking to Michael and Matt here. They have a fantastic new podcast, Who's Your Daddy? We're going to play just a little snippet and we'll talk about it on the other side. Listen to Left of Str8 Show right here on the Left of Str8 Radio Network. So there you go. You guys are very open and honest with that. That was a fantastic episode. I mean, you're learning a lot in this journey. You're now, I think when this is airing, you're 8 or 9 episodes in. Talk about how this has been for you, the ups and downs. Are you enjoying the journey at least?
Such a loaded question.
Enjoying. Oh, that's one way of putting it. I'm gonna be enjoying it when it's over. We gotta like enjoy the journey while it's happening, I guess, right?
I know. I think there's a lot of things in life. I mean,
It's
when you're in it, you're like, oh my God, like get this over with. And then you look back and you're like, wow, that was really like formative.
Yeah.
And like we learned a lot and it helped us grow as people. And so
We are learning a lot. That's
Totally.
the biggest thing.
Totally. We're trying to enjoy it as much as we can. There are just a lot of like stress points, I think, that are still to come, that are in the back of our mind. We've essentially gone through the IVF portion of it up to the point of having embryos. That part I think we had a lot of fun with, actually, and was like very exciting. But we've been waiting for months and months now. I guess we literally got the email. It was like a year ago almost that we went in and did our donation and everything. So it's almost been a full year from the IVF portion of things, let alone like starting the whole journey itself before that. But yeah, I think there's just been some things that were unexpected, things we've learned along the way, filming the podcast and interviewing a lot of people who have done surrogacy, where we're rethinking or not trying our best to not have like regrets, because you don't know if you would have changed the thing that you did, if you would have had a better outcome. But I think there's a lot of like second guessing that goes on with results of different things that you're like, maybe we should have done it this way versus this way. Maybe we should have done it here versus there. But overall, we're just gonna enjoy the journey. But we are looking to match with a surrogate in the near future, whenever we find the right person.
Yeah, we're not just waiting per se, but we are looking actively for a surrogate to be a part of our journey. So that is asking a lot of questions of a lot of people who we have connected with on Facebook, online, just through contacts and friends of friends. And hopefully we'll find somebody who is a good match soon.
There you go. Fingers crossed on that. And like you said, it's a whole different animal. I mean, your YouTube and everything, I'm sure. I mean, it's very much choreographed to some extent, but you're still going on vacations and doing this here. You have to book the people. You have to make sure that you clean the house that day. You got all the silly things you don't even think about, right?
Yeah. We've definitely cut back on travel a ton this year. Well, for the second half of this year, at least. We did a lot of travel in January, February, and March. And then once we got back from Australia, Costa Rica, we decided that was great. That's been enough for the year. Let's stay home for a bit, because we knew that we wanted to start the podcast. And we're like, we got to start recording. We got to like start working on it. And so we basically completely flipped from full-time traveling as much as we could to now we're at home recording, editing, and trying to launch our podcast. So it was a big switch, and I've been so happy though to stay home and experience Portland in a more real way, because we've been traveling so much over the last few years that we haven't really been able to develop a great community in Portland or see Portland in have fun here. We haven't been able to have fun in our own city. We've just been kind of like living here to store our stuff and sleep between trips.
Oh my gosh, it sounds so dramatic. No, but he is very right in the sense that I think we've been able to foster a lot more community in the last year. Just kind of being around a little bit more, hanging out with people on the weekends when maybe we would have been traveling. So that's been really cool and really nice. So yeah, we moved to like a really cool spot, right, in the US. Like Portland's a really amazing place to be. And we were traveling a lot of places from it. And now I think we're just trying to be like, okay, there's like a lot of cool stuff around here. We should hang out with people, see people, and then like it's a beautiful state. So do some local stuff.
I didn't know where the zoo was the first 2 years I lived there. It's like there's a zoo. It's like it's crazy. So it's like I was the kind of guy I would just go to Northwest 13th and have coffee all day long and visit with friends.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
and all books, which we talked about. So
that's a great
area.
A beautiful
city. Best laid out city in the entire world. You can't get lost there, right? It's amazing.
Maybe, I mean, like,
you can't get lost there?
I couldn't, no.
Oh, I get lost all the time, but I'm not great at directions, so.
I was talking to somebody who's a city planner, and I lament a little bit of like some weird interchanges and like interstate things. And I was like, man, you have some work to do in Portland. And he's like, actually, Portland is one of the most like well-planned cities in the US. And I was like, wait, really? And then I got to thinking about it, and I was like, well, yeah, he's not maybe entirely wrong. As I visit other cities and I get frustrated with them, and I'm like, why is everything so spread apart? Like, why do I have to drive like 14,000 miles to get to this next place?
I mean, Seattle's insanity with intersections and all that.
Yeah. No,
it's like I remember like Burnside and the river, right?
Mm-hmm.
Northwest, southwest, and it's street 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you're going to 10345, you're going 100 blocks northwest, and I can find myself there. Just if they start curving around, like you said, that's when it gets a little scary.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there you go. All right. Well, let's talk about. I mean, you've had some of these fantastic guests. 90 Day Fiance guys were on a bunch. How is that kind of talking to other people with experience? Have you learned anything that you weren't expecting, or what's kind of been your biggest learning experience so far from someone else talking it through?
Man, yes. I mean, one thing that's been really, really amazing is just being able to talk to people that we've not met in person, but we know, online, and they have a story of non-traditional family building, and just kind of getting to talk to them has been super, super fun. Honestly, I think one of the episodes that's not come out yet, is with one of our actually really good friends who we see quite often, who did foster care.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks in depth kind of just about what it's like, how it's structured, things that you need to know, things you have to do, how certain laws can affect XYZ. And like, honestly, I'm probably going to just listen to that episode back, even though I was like in it, edited it, and
I'm gonna listen to it back too.
I think that there was a lot of
good information in there. It's so much that we didn't know beforehand.
Yeah, but also, I mean, we've learned tons of stuff from a lot of people who had done like their surrogacy journeys, and yeah, I mean, we still have so many more people that we want to talk to. So
I've said this before, like our process in surrogacy, we've completely have changed our minds and have flipped on so many different things when considering our journey since starting the podcast and starting these interviews, because we've just learned a ton from each one of these conversations. Because when is it that you like actually sit down with somebody who's gone through the surrogacy process and interview them in depth for like an hour to an hour and a half?
Mm-hmm.
And you get so much info from that. It's amazing. And so I wish we had done this podcast before we started surrogacy, because that would have saved us a lot of expended energy, I think, just worrying about things and trying to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like Michael said, I don't know if it happens to you guys, but I learn more in the editing than I do in the interview, because we kind of zone out on the interview, right? We're talking, we're automatic pilot, then you're editing. It's like, wow, they said something really profound that I didn't even realize at the time. So you find that information too, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes after an interview, I just sit on the couch for 10 minutes completely brain dead. Like it feels like mush, because I'm like, oh my God, that was so much info and that was so great. But like my mind is reeling from it.
Well, I just appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me through it. I mean, like I said, I've been a huge fan back from the travel days 6 or 7 years ago to now. And I'm excited for your journey. Like I said, I didn't know that it's been a year and a half in the making. So now I hope the fruitfulness comes to you here. Where would you tell my listeners, what would be the first steps you recommend in starting this journey now, besides starting your own podcast and talking about it? Where would you recommend people go?
I think, like if they're trying to do surrogacy,
adoption, foster to adopt. Well, first I would recommend go to Who's Your Daddy podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcast. We're available on all platforms. Episodes 1 and 3 are a great place to start on our podcast, especially episode 3. That is going to walk you through the first steps, whether you're looking into surrogacy, adoption, foster to adopt, you're just thinking about having kids. That's a great place, because it's going to actually discuss like some of those questions and how do you address these things.
Obviously that foster care episode is going to come out eventually. If they were committed to a surrogacy journey, a lot of the people that have had a lot of great things to say, they just found a reputable IVF clinic close by, and they went in, they had their consultation, and they got a ton of questions answered. We did a little bit different version of that, but I think in interviewing a lot of people after the fact, that is probably where I would start if you're doing surrogacy, is find the most reputable IVF clinic
in your area. Go
there,
talk to a doctor.
See, they'll give you, good vibes or not on whether, if you feel comfortable there. But people in North Carolina, people in Chicago, people here, they just had gone to their IVF clinic, and that's where I would start. Don't worry about anything beyond that.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us into your home today. Let everyone know your website. Your website's fantastic with some of your photography, Matt, and everything else. Talk about where they can find that, where they can find you on social media if you've been under a rock the last 14 years.
Oh my God, no. It's michaelandmatt.com is our website. We post travel blogs there. So any travel guides and places for anywhere that you may want to go, lots of them on there. And then we're at Michael and Matt on Instagram and on YouTube. And we actually publish our podcasts on YouTube as well in video form. So if you're a video podcast watcher and listener, then you can check that out. And we're on TikTok, Michael and Matt 1.
And Who's Your Daddy podcast on Apple, Spotify, or any podcast platform.
I love it. Guys, been my absolute pleasure having you on the show. Stick around because we're going to do a 5 questions with. We're going to air next Tuesday for you guys. Get a little in-depth and personal here. Been great having you on the Left of Str8 Show. Have a great afternoon and enjoy your summer in beautiful downtown Portland.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you.
All right, guys. You've been listening to Left of Str8 Show right here on Left of Str8 Radio. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Left of Str8 Show. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast distributor, and please give us a 5-star rating so more listeners can find us. You can follow us on social media, and be sure to check out our website, www.leftofstraightradio.com, for contests and other news and information. See you next week.